Remember that time when Israel was getting ready to nuke America? You probably don't, but we'll revisit that in a second. Israel has never officially admitted to having a nuclear weapon, but it did develop a doctrine of last resort retaliation if the country were to ever be faced with annihilation. According to legendary investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, meaning Israel policy is that if they go down, the rest of the world is going down with them. This is a secret so big that every US president since Eisenhower played along with it, and it almost changed the world forever. So today we're diving into how Israel became a nuclear power and why America helped hide it, and just how close we came to a catastrophe a long time ago. So let's rewind back to the 1950s. Israel was a young country surrounded by enemies, still scarred from the Holocaust. Their leaders were guys like David Ben-Gurion and Ernst Bergum. So they were convinced that they needed one thing to survive. They needed the ultimate weapon, a nuclear bomb. The problem was they had no uranium. They had no reactor, no money, and no real allies willing to hand over the keys to the nuclear club. So what do? You get creative. And by creative, I mean secretive, sneaky, and a little bit genius at times. So Israel's plan started with a lie. They said they were building a textile factory in the Negev desert. Sounds harmless, right? Except it wasn't a factory. It was Dimona, a massive underground nuclear reactor. And they didn't do it alone. France, of all countries, the French connection, was their partner in crime. So why France? Well, in the 50s, France was fighting its own battles like the Suez Canal crisis and saw Israel as a buddy in the Middle East. So they didn't just help, they practically gifted Israel the nuclear playbook. Uranium, reactor designs, scientist training, the works. And in return, Israel shared intelligence and kept quiet. It was a handshake deal that absolutely changed history. Now, here's where it gets juicy. The U.S. wasn't clueless. By 1958, American U-2 spy planes were buzzing over the desert, snapping photos of this so-called textile factory, and it looked way too big, way too secure, and raised a lot of questions with the CIA and red flags. They said, this is no factory. It's a bomb factory. And by 1960, they were sure that Israel was going nuclear. But here's the kicker. President Eisenhower, who knew about it, didn't say a word. Why? Cold War politics and pressure from pro-Israel groups and maybe a little fear of rocking the boat. So that silence set the stage for decades of looking the other way. But John F. Kennedy comes along, and unlike Eisenhower, JFK was not cool with just pretending. He demanded that Israel open Dimona for U.S. inspections. An Israeli Prime Minister, Ben-Gurion, he stalled. When inspectors finally showed up, they got the VIP tour, fake control rooms, bricked off walls, the whole 9 yards. It was like literally like a Hollywood set designed to fool them. And Kennedy was furious. He wrote letters, pushed hard, said a nuclear Middle East would be a disaster. But Israel kept dodging. And then in 1963, Kennedy was assassinated. And his replacement, Lyndon B. Johnson, had, let's just say, a different vibe when it came to a nuclear Israel. LBJ was tight with pro-Israel donors and didn't push the issue. Inspections, done. Questions, ignored. That's when strategic ambiguity was born. Israel's nukes didn't officially exist, and the U.S. wouldn't ask. Now, behind closed doors, Israel was moving fast. By the late 60s, they had enough plutonium for actual bombs. They built Jericho missiles. They even teamed up with South Africa, which is obviously another unstable, controversial player in this equation. And they were testing nuclear weapons underground with South Africa. And then here's where they developed something called the Samson Option, named after the biblical Samson, who brought down the temple on himself and his enemies It was Israel's doomsday plan. If the country was ever facing total defeat, they'd unleash their nukes on everybody. Not just deterrence, but apocalyptic revenge. But here's where the story takes a dark turn. 1973, the Yom Kippur War hits. Egypt and Syria start attacking Israel, and Israel's caught off guard by this, losing ground fast, and in the middle of the chaos, Israel leaders did something chilling. They put their nuclear arsenal on war alert. Warheads were literally prepped, missiles were aimed, and U.S. satellites caught the movement. And Washington totally freaked out. And within hours, Henry Kissinger and President Nixon launched something called Operation Nickel Grass, a massive airlifted weapon sent straight to Israel. Now, was this just support for an ally, or were they scared Israel would go nuclear? Historians still argue about it, but one thing is clear. Israel's bombs gave them the leverage. Big time. By the 1980s, Israel's arsenal was next level. We're talking neutron bombs, cruise missiles, even submarine capabilities. And while they're building this secret empire, they're also spying on their biggest ally, the United States. Ever heard of a guy named Jonathan Pollard? He was a U.S. Navy analyst who stole thousands of classified documents and handed them over to Israel. Stuff like Arab air defense, Soviet arms deals, even NSA secrets. Now, Pollard gets caught, gets sentenced to life, and Israel denied everything until years later when they admitted he was the guy. And Pollard wasn't alone. There's also Arnon Mikan. Yep, the Hollywood producer behind movies like Fight Club and a whole bunch of movies that you would probably recognize. It turns out he was a freaking Mossad operative, smuggling nuclear bomb triggers out of the U.S. into Israel. I'm not making it up, it's documented. So why doesn't anyone ask or talk about this situation? It's because the political landmine, like the episode that I made last week. Israel nukes estimated at 80 to 400 warheads, and they aren't part of any treaty, no inspectors, no sanctions, no accountability. They've mastered nuclear ambiguity, denying they have bombs while letting everyone know that they do. It's like a magic trick. You see the effect, but never the how. In the U.S., every president since Nixon has gone along with this whole thing. Even Obama, while pushing the Iran deal, he stayed silent on Israel's arsenal. Trump, Biden, same deal. Plus, the U.S. sends over $3 billion a year in aid and blocks any UN pressure, and the ultimate open secret. But let's talk about the problem this creates. Imagine a Middle East war spiraling out of control, kind of like it is right now, and Israel feels like they're getting pressured, and the U.S. doesn't want to help Israel, and then Israel says, all right, well, then we have no choice but to go nuclear because we're being overpowered right now and you're not helping us. So that's a really great, powerful way to make damn sure that the U.S. will always help Israel if they threaten to use nuclear weapons if they get overpowered, which they would get overpowered in a land battle if this thing stops being an air battle. So the stakes are insane, and it's not just about one country. It's about what happens when you build a weapon you can't really admit it exists because of how powerful it is. Now let's dig into what the challenge is here. How did Israel pull this off without the world stopping them? It started with people like Ernst Bergman, a chemist and a Holocaust survivor who believed a nuclear bomb was the only way to prevent another Holocaust or genocide. He teamed up with Ben-Gurion and Shimon Peres to make it happen. All right, so where does this leave us? Israel's nuclear program is a masterclass in deception, diplomacy, and raw determination. They built the fortress of ambiguity, backed by the U.S. silence and their own grip. But it's also a warning. The Samson Option isn't just a strategy, it's a reminder of how far a country will go when it feels cornered. And with no oversight, no treaty, no accountability, the risk of miscalculation is very real. This isn't just an Israel story. It's about the cost of pretending, the danger of secrets, and what happens when power goes unchecked. So guys, you tell me, do you think it's a plausible scenario if, let's just say, Israel is being aggressive with the country in a way that's going to inevitably need the United States assistance, and at a certain point the United States says, yeah, we're good on this, you're not listening to our counsel, and we don't want any part of this conflict. So Israel starts getting beat up by a neighbor in a way that looks like they could get overthrown. You don't think they're going to start talking about using a nuclear weapon? That'll be the first thing they talk about. So then it becomes our problem again. So that's the type of stuff I don't like, is like when we get dragged into stuff against our will. And I know everybody says, oh yeah, there's never going to be a ground situation where we have to actually go there and Americans have to fight. Yeah, good. No, there better not be. But even if that's not the case, even if we just simply don't want to participate in the way that they want us to participate in, and they get beat up because of that, then we're going to be damn near forced to participate. So I'm not in favor of that. But guys, if you enjoyed this video, I got the perfect video for you. I did a video last week about why Christians are brainwashed into thinking that they need to be obsessed with Israel. So check out this video right here about the Scofield Bible, the Bible that brainwashed Christians over the last 100 years. And if you want more content like this in a more unfiltered way, or if you just want to support the show, check out the VT Research Group. QR code right here, link in the description, link pinned in the comment section. As always, guys, much love. God bless. Thank you for watching.